So the holiday season is over and a new semester is beginning. And I had orientation today. And the first thing we talked about was sexual harassment. Yeah, I think you know what I'm going to say about this. Now, it all started with this pretest. I want to read you some of the questions from this pretest. Now, this first set of questions give you different scenarios, and you're asked whether you agree or disagree with each of the scenarios. If you don't mean to offend someone, then you don't have to worry about being accused of harassment. Now, here's what I think. If you unintentionally offended somebody, and they told you that they were offended, and then you stopped, then there shouldn't be a problem. You didn't know it was offensive, but now you know, so you stopped. Now, I could see it being harassment if you kept on doing it after the person told you that it offended them. But here's the thing. The way it was presented in the workshop is that if somebody is offended, they are under no obligation to tell that person that they are offended, and they can just go ahead and rat them out. How is somebody going to know if what they said was offensive if that person won't tell them anything? And what's offensive to one person may not be offensive to another person. I could say something to person A and it's perfectly okay. I could say the very same thing to person B and they'll be offended. This next question says, one who overhears but who is not part of a coworker's daily conversations about his sexual exploits the evening before has no basis for a sexual harassment claim. Notice how they use the word his and not his or her. Now there's this next set of questions, and here they give you different scenarios, and you're supposed to determine whether each scenario is appropriate, inappropriate, or inappropriate and may be harassment. I think this workshop is inappropriate. This scenario says, to get your attention, a coworker touches your arm as he says your name. Once again, we have the pronoun he, not he or she. And about touching the arm. Now, if you touch somebody's arm and it offends them, and they tell you, hey, this is offensive, please don't do it, and they stop doing it, then what's the harm? I can understand it being harassment if they kept on doing it, even after you told them that it was offensive. But you're just touching an arm. It's not like you're touching something else. And the leader of this presentation said that, you know, some people may not mind being touched. They may not mind a back scratch or a shoulder rub or touching the arm, but other people might be offended at that. And that's true. I'm not going to deny that. But one of the things that she said was, well, how can you tell, you know, who would be offended and who wouldn't be offended? Good rule of thumb, don't touch, period. Keep your hands to yourself. And I'm thinking this whole time, you know, we're a room full of adults, okay? And you're telling us, keep your hands to yourself. That's the kind of stuff that you teach 5-year-olds. And you're teaching that to us. And you know what? You know what the funny thing is? During the break, when everybody cleared out of the room, I noticed that a few people had taken notes during the presentation. And on one person's piece of paper, they had actually wrote down, don't touch, period. You had to actually write that down? I wonder what else they would need to take notes on.
And put your garbage in a garbage can, people. I can't stress that enough. Don't just throw it out the window.
This is so humiliating.
Garbage in garbage can. Makes sense.
We'll do one more. Your boss, who is married, asks you day after day to share intimate details of your dates, even though you are uncomfortable doing so. and insists on reminiscing in detail with you about his single days. Once again, it's his, not his or her. And does the question of whether she indicated whether this was offensive to her ever even come into play? I mean, how do we know that he has absolutely no idea this is offending her? Maybe if he knew, he wouldn't do it. Never once in any of these scenarios was the female the harasser. They either gave gender-neutral scenarios where it was up to your imagination whether the harasser was male or female, or they gave situations where it was clearly a male who was the harasser. Never once was it just a female. And as you would expect, the person giving the presentation on sexual harassment is a female. And she used hypothetical situations to illustrate her points. And she picked a random male member from the group and used him as an example. And she said something along the lines of, yeah, and if I was staring at John's butt and licking my lips, that would be inappropriate of me. And I couldn't help but wonder, if that had been a man leading the presentation and he picked a random female of the group and said, hey, if I was groping Kelly, that would be sexual harassment. I don't think he would get away with that. So anyway, we watched a video on sexual harassment. Now, before the video started, I said to the guy sitting next to me, how much do you want to bet that they portray women as the victims of sexual harassment and all the men as the harassers? And maybe we'll see one example where the genders are reversed, where they'll say, see, even women can be harassers too. It's not just men because, as we all know, men are the harassers by default, and it's such a shocking fact to learn that women can be the harassers too. I hate to have to do this to you, but I think I'm going to play you some of the video. But I warn you, it's not going to be too pleasant.
Let's say you think someone you work with would enjoy a suggestive cartoon or email. Before you send it, ask yourself, would I send this to my grandma?
Yeah, just focus on the email that he's sending. Don't focus on the fact that he's getting hit. So here we have our first act of violence against the man. Why don't we see a woman sending an offensive email and her grandpa hits her?
This is appropriately called the grandma filter.
Why isn't there a grandpa
Or
filter?
let's say you think someone you work with looks particularly attractive one day. See how it works? Compliment someone's fashion, not their body. Or better yet, compliment their work rather than their appearance. When in doubt, ask yourself,
Would you say that to your grandma?
If the answer is no, don't say it,
Don't send it.
Or do it?
because you know better.
Notice how it's only men who have to filter what they have to say. It's only women who are saying, yeah, you should know better. So it's the women that are talking about what's right, but the men are doing what's wrong. Ugh, and what's with that head bob? Stop it.
that's Jeremy, 26, single, looking for love.
Hey, I'm Jeremy.
Kim.
That's Kim, 22, single, not interested. But that's not going to stop Jeremy from trying.
So here we have the typical scene. The man approaches the woman is not interested, and the man is persistent. I'd love to see a woman approach a man who isn't interested in her, but she keeps on trying anyway. It would be a nice change to see the woman take the initiative and be persistent when it comes to this kind of stuff.
And why not? It's a party. No harm, no foul. Okay, there's our teaching moment. Flirting is nothing more than a small sexual advance. At a party, it's reasonable to assume that sexual advances may come with the territory. If the advance goes too far, the offended person can just walk away or leave the party altogether.
Oh, her behavior was justified, right? But his wasn't.
At work, we don't have that choice.
And here's yet another example where the man is the harasser and the female is the victim.
How's it going, beautiful?
Fine.
Are you uncomfortable with the fact that you're beautiful?
Do you have a work-related question?
Alright, now brace yourselves for this.
So what's the worst that can happen? A wet shirt, a few loose teeth?
A few loose teeth. Well, I'm so glad we can make light of violence against a man. Now, at this point in the video, everybody at this workshop laughed. Even the leader of this presentation. Now, do you think maybe she would pause the video right here and say something about Kim's behavior? That her reaction to the situation was out of line? No! Him getting water thrown on him, pepper sprayed, and hit was totally justified, right? So let's sum this up. This man is portrayed as some sort of creep because he went up to the woman and told her that he liked her and wanted to get together. But when a woman hits a man, the reaction is laughter. So making a woman slightly uncomfortable is like the crime of the century. But a woman hitting a man is not only acceptable, it gets a laugh. Now here's the thing. If she liked this guy, then this would not be sexual harassment at all. It would just be a guy trying to get a date. But because she isn't interested in him, it's sexual harassment. Let's reverse the genders. Imagine a woman walking up to a man and she says that she likes him and wants to get together with him and he punches her. Then I'd no longer be in a workshop about sexual harassment, would I? I would be in a workshop about stopping violence. Yes, the woman can say the exact same thing to the man. But if he punches and pepper sprays her, then he's still the bad guy. Instead of hearing, well, she shouldn't have sexually harassed him, we now hear, doesn't matter what she did or said, you never hit her under any circumstances. She can do or say anything to the man. She can harass him, threaten him, hit him, and he still has no right to hit her. But a woman has every right to slap and punch a man who had the audacity to show an interest in her. I look at this video and I see all this violence against men being justified and laughed at. But who cares about that when we have bigger issues to deal with, like calling a woman beautiful? I mean, how could I even talk about violence against men when this is going on?
How's it going, beautiful?
Unbelievable. There are plenty more examples in this video where we see female victims of male harassment. Now at the end, we do see one situation where the genders are reversed. And honestly, that's not good enough. I bet they threw that in there to try and stop people like me from saying that it's sexist. Well, no, we're not putting men down. See, we have this one case where it's a woman harassing a man. No. That's not going to cut it. Especially since they justify violence against a man just because he may have made a woman slightly uncomfortable. Apparently, a woman's comfort is more important than a man's safety. Let me repeat that. A woman's comfort is more important than a man's safety. They also talk about the reasonable woman standard, and one guy sitting behind me said, that's sexist, which of course it was. But again, the presenter doesn't stop and discuss the sexism and double standards against men. It just passes by. So there was another workshop at this orientation, and this one dealt with diversity. Now the first question that was asked was, what comes to mind when you hear the word diversity? And I'm thinking, I really hope you don't call on me because you probably won't like what I have to say. Anyway, most of the room said different. They think of different when they hear the word diversity. Now, he mainly talked about how other cultures may find certain things offensive. For example, somebody from another culture may find giving the thumbs up to be offensive. It's like the equivalent of giving the middle finger. Or pointing with one or two fingers may be offensive to some people. So he says what he does instead is he points with his palm. He points like this because it has the highest chance of offending the least amount of people. And I find it funny that he phrased it that way because it seems to imply that there may very well be somebody out there who is offended if you point like that. Anyway, I'm thinking this entire time, really? This is what we're concerned with? Thumbs up, finger pointing, and arm touching? We're more focused on this than other offenses like, I don't know, like violence against men being a joke. You know, it's ironic how these workshops are about being sensitive to other people's feelings and making sure you don't offend anybody. But this entire orientation was offensive! So at the end of the orientation, they give you a little survey, and you're supposed to rate each of the workshops on its usefulness on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being useless and 5 being useful. Now, I rated the sexual harassment workshop a 1, and I wrote in the comments and suggestions section, maybe next time show a sexual harassment video that doesn't vilify men so much, or portray violence against men in a positive light. Now, my little feedback probably won't do much of anything because it's just one negative evaluation among a sea of a bunch of other people that probably just gave a bunch of 5s. But you know what? At least they now know that somebody took notice.